I remember years ago, the first time I ever was called for jury duty, they called us into this big assembly room, and the judge would come out. You know, of course, he was weird. They had a weird doorway where he'd stand above everybody else, like the Pope, right? And he was taking questions from the audience. You know, I mean, he gave the whole spiel about you, blah blah, the law side, blah blah. Then he actually foolish enough to take questions. Okay, and a couple of questions were by, and I figured, okay, I got to ask this guy. Excuse me, I didn't hear anything mentioned about the ability of the American jury to acquit a defendant in a particular case, even though the facts seem to go against them just on the conscience of the jurors. And if they feel that then this particular conviction would work an injustice on this particular defendant. You know, and he said, well, no, he kind of went hem and hawed, and I went on and it says, well, you know, back in slavery times when fugitive slaves, you know, and I went through the whole thing, says the juries would regularly acquit defendants even though they stipulated that they had done the things that the prosecutor said to do. And this judge actually stood in front of this whole group of people and said, those juries were wrong. It was like, whoa! I wish I had video back then, man. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, they're under no just as police are under no obligation to tell you the truth, the court is under no obligation to tell you the truth. And, I mean, think about it. They're working for the government. The lawyers work for the government. The executive branch, the judicial branch, the whole division between them is really illusory. You know, who pays their, you know, who's writing the checks? I mean, we pay for it, but, you know, it's incestuous organization, and their own rules or their own regulations do not hold them accountable for lying, for them lying to us. We can't lie to them. We'll get in deep shit for that. But if they lie to us, you know, whatever, it's okay. And it's only if they act on those lies in some so heinous that no one could try to excuse it. You know, for instance, explicitly going out of your way to infringe on someone's rights. Only then is it a no-no, and trying to get someone convicted for that is almost impossible. Anyway, so you had additional questions?
Oh, no. Well, I guess it might be sort of wonkish and get into legal technicalities of it, but what actually, I guess, outlines what the judge is compelled to say to you? Is that like a common law thing that's been generated, or is there a specific...
I suspect that it's probably either in the constitution of the state or is just judicial practice that is built up. Often courts have the ability to, the judges have the ability to set certain aspects of how the court is run, so maybe they have some power over that. It's possible that that just the legislative branch in that state has power over declaring exactly what the judicial branch is expected to do and handle certain scenarios. So I suspect that it depends on the jurisdiction, because that's, you know, even though America has gotten more and more statute-based, much of the history of court and why it's so convoluted comes from common law. And so if you want to understand it, you probably need, you know, Black's Law Dictionary and you know, a good lawyer with history of the topic, and it's particular to the state.
I can give like a kind of a short New Hampshire answer for that, but and don't think this is a non-answer, but in a lot of states, the state bureaucracy is so big, it's so imposing, and you feel like there's no way to get an answer. Here you can probably actually call, the governor's office runs a kind of a hotline, so you call them, they transfer you to another office, and usually you can get a question like that answered in 5 minutes. So I can give you the governor's number, I think it's 271-2121, and it's actually that easy here, so that's one of the good things. They just transfer you to the right office, they answer your question, they're actually relatively friendly about it. It's kind of shocking when you do it the first time. Okay. Wonkishness is allowed too, it's okay.
You know, the government can't be doing these things to people without our consent, and they get our consent through these things called adhesion contracts, where if you give them your signature on something like a license application, then they presume, they have the right to presume that you're a 14th Amendment citizen, which makes you basically chattel property of the federal government. So that's that's why when you identify yourself as that all caps name, you are saying, yes, I am that entity, that legal fiction that's required to follow all your rules and regulations, because that's all you are, is a corporation, just like Walmart. Walmart, you go to work for them, and you have to wear the shirt and tie or whatever. And the corporation here, called the United States, does the same thing, imposes all its rules on you. But they would not be able to do a damn thing if we didn't say, okay, and pay all the taxes, and get all the licenses, and all that shit.
I hear those Restore America people might be over here next door in the Village Green. They're invited to, and we have tables available and chairs and things like that. So if they want to have a presentation over there, they can do that.
Which one is that?
Talk a little bit about FIJA, just the history that started it and how long ago.
I honestly don't really know. I'm not a FIJA activist or a jury nullification activist. I understand its history. I will explain it to people, but honestly, I do so many other things. I generally don't have the time. But if you go to FIJA.org, you'll find everything there.
Well, you know, we own the federal property, so didn't we build it and pay for it? And isn't it property of the people? And
Really, they own it. Go ahead.
You know, it's funny. I was in Allentown with Julian, and Julian said that to a court security officer who works for the U.S. Marshals there. And the court security officer dug out a quarter out of his pocket, got in Julian's face, practically spit in his face, dropped the quarter in his pocket, says, here's your money back. So there's a great divide between reality and, you know, the way it's supposed to work. You know, for example, this gentleman who said, we give them consent, yeah, but the thing is, if you don't give them consent, if you don't get the driver's license, if you don't sign the bail agreement, if you don't sign all these things, the punishments are drastic. Because if you drive your car down the road without a license and they stop you, they're going to put you in jail, they're going to keep you there a while, they're going to set stringent requirements. So at some level, we're screwed either way. You know what I'm saying?
Slavery, they're enslaving us.
Yeah, we're screwed either way.
The facto government.
At some level. There's got to be like a third way to get out of that.
Yeah, or there either has to be massive disobedience in that we just, as a culture, we evolve out of this idea that any of those actions are legitimate, that these people have some sort of higher authority, and we just say no on such a regular basis that either the system collapses out of practical aspects, or the system collapses because, philosophically it is no longer necessary. But I think we need to get past this idea that we are the government, that we own private property, or public property. It's not public property, it's the government's property. And they tell us how we are going to use it. We get to pay for it through the threat of force, and we have no control over it. And as soon as we recognize that, I think then we can move on past this confliction that people have, because we're constantly told, well, we are the government. No, we aren't the government, they are the government, and they tell us how the stuff that we pay for is going to be used.
Yeah, but we're reclaiming the government as we are the government, so you have to get a different mindset that we are, and that they are trespassing against us.
That assumes rule of law. Right now we're under rule of man. And the thing is, if you go and you try to claim that, like we did in Allentown that day, they're going to respond with excessive force.
Well, we know this.
So I mean, like you can't say that's our property and expect that any of them to respect that at this time.
Okay, well, we're out of time. Thanks for everyone that was here.